Hi there, and welcome to Sofa Science with me, Dr. James Brown. In this series, you get to meet some of the excellent researchers and scientists we have here at Aston University, and hopefully get to learn about the research they're doing into health and life sciences, as well as finding out why they chose to do science in the first place, or maybe science chose them. In this second episode, I'm really excited to be able to introduce doctoral researcher in psychology, Katie Edwards, who I've not yet met properly, which is probably lucky for Katie, but whose work I'm well aware of. Katie, hi.
Hi, nice to meet you.
It's a pleasure to meet you. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Are you?
I am, and I'm really excited to talk to you.
Yeah,
I'd like
me.
to start, I'd like to start by really delving into why you became a scientist in the first place.
Yeah, so I suppose my interest in science really started in school, as it does with most people. And with psychology, obviously, it's not something that you tend to study until quite a bit later in school. I was really lucky to already know what psychology was. So my mum did a degree in psychology, and I think I could spell psychology by the age of around 8 years old or something ridiculous. It used to be my thing that I'd always shout about. So yeah, I always had a bit of an awareness of psychology. But I think it was so around my GCSEs, I was lucky enough to do an AS level in psychology. And it was just then that I became honestly obsessed and fascinated with it. I would always be revising that and not my other subjects, which was a bit naughty, but I was just wanted to know more about this thing that I'd never really had the chance to look at before. Um, so yeah, I'd say that was when it all began. I've always loved people, so to do to study a subject where you're literally trying to understand why people behave the way they do was just perfect for me. And I think, especially after I did my full A level in psychology, I knew that psychology was where I was going to go in my career and definitely my degree. But I think coming down to more of the science part of things was definitely my interest in research. So when I'd read about research, experimental studies and things like that, I was just I would always be so interested in looking at how they did it and how you could literally manipulate certain things and try and answer all of these really cool questions. Um, so yeah, when I did my undergraduate at Aston. So I've always been always been here at Aston, and I had the opportunity to do a placement year, and a role came up as a research assistant for a year in eating behaviour, and I thought that's perfect. I want that, and was lucky enough to get it. So yeah, I worked for a whole year as a researcher in eating, and I think that was truly when I realised that research and doing these experimental studies and being a scientist was really for me. I was honestly gutted for that year to end. It was such a fun year. I was like, I don't want to go back to final year. I just want to carry on. And yeah, obviously we have a really good eating behaviour team at Aston, and I just said, do you know what? I'd love to do a PhD and stay in research, and the opportunity came up, and here I am. So yeah, so it's been a long progression of just different things gradually making me more and more fascinated about why we behave the way that we do, I suppose.
I love that story. I love that how your first influence was your mum, and to actually have that kind of that idea of psychology being something that you're interested in, obviously from a very young age. And it was also really interesting to hear that you did a placement year, and then getting that little kind of bite-sized introduction into research, particularly in what's such an interesting area at Aston, has now led you to do a PhD. And if you don't mind, I'd like to ask a question about that now. So not everybody knows exactly what a PhD is. You're doing a PhD. You're a doctoral researcher. Can you tell us a little bit more about what a PhD entails? So, what's your day to day? What types of activities do you do, and what happens at the end of your PhD?
Yeah, so I mean it's very varied. You do so many different things on a PhD. So obviously my PhD is in psychology and particularly experimental research. So the majority of my PhD is focused on running various experimental studies. But yeah, day to day, I can be writing up, designing a new study, conducting a study, so collecting data and also analysing that. And the sort of further you go on in your career as a researcher, I think you definitely start to juggle these tasks where
Mm.
in the morning you're collecting data for something, and in the afternoon you're analysing data from a study you've just finished. So yeah, I suppose day to day it's very varied. But that's what I love about it, is the fact that you never have the opportunity to get bored with something, because you're always moving on to the next thing. And if anything, you're always so excited for that study to finish, just so you can get your hands get stuck into the data and see what you found. But yeah, I think it's a very personal experience doing a PhD, especially because it's so focused on one research area. Like no one else really has the same experience, so no two PhDs will be the same. So I think in that sense, it's really important to make sure that you've got a good support network around you, because it can be quite isolating, but at the
Mm.
same time, especially in psychology, the PhD that I do, I'm fortunate to get to interact with plenty of people. So yeah, day to day you can be working for hours on your own, just like reading things or writing up things, and then all evening I can be watching children eat raw broccoli and mange too for most of the evening. So that's how much my day can vary, definitely. Um,
Do you have a favorite bit? Because I remember doing my PhD, and as a laboratory scientist, and this is shocking, really, I didn't enjoy that much being in the lab, but I loved kind of jumping from. I have ADHD. I love jumping from subject to subject, and the end of one mini study to another. So the things that you've talked about, is there a bit particularly you enjoy the most?
Um, it's difficult to say, because I think when you do one thing for a long time, you start to be like, oh,
Mm,
okay, I'm ready for that little bit to change. But I really do love the data collection part more
yeah.
recently, because I think with some studies where, say, they're an online study and I'm not as involved in the data collection, but if it's a lab-based study or the ones like I've been doing with Zoom, I get to actually interact with the children and watch them eating and hopefully enjoying eating the broccoli and mange too. And I think for me, I like chatting to people, so I think that part is really enjoyable. But I think because I am a scientist, I'm just so ready to get stuck into the data and see what it's found. That part is probably the most fascinating to me. But yeah, it's really nice. I think the way that my PhD is, that I can get that interaction with parents and children. I think that's something that I do love. So yeah.
It sounds very rewarding. So obviously you're a young female scientist, and that makes you a role model for other young females out there that are interested in science, that maybe want to be a researcher. And you've mentioned a little bit about your mum, and I think you may have answered this question, but did you have any role models growing up? Was it your mum, or were there any scientists or other people that inspired you?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was for me. My main role model was my mum. So as I said, she did her degree in psychology, but she actually teaches in sixth form education. And I think when she was around 40, she was like, I'm going to go and do a master's. Always wanted to do a master's, and this one came up that she wanted to do. So she did that alongside still teaching and still having two children, which is definitely a full
Wow.
time job in itself. So I think she just really showed me that if you want something, then you can just go and get it. So having her there to always both support and inspire me is really helped me, and definitely her passion for psychology has transferred to me, that's for sure. But yeah, I think as well, like I'm really lucky in the so at Aston we have the Peach Research Group, which is our eating behaviour group. And I think I've just been surrounded by so many inspirational female scientists that have honestly, I think so. I'm sort of the baby of the group, if you like. I've sort of come straight through, and obviously I didn't have a break between my undergrad and my PhD. So for me, I've had all of these women to look up to and show me how it's done, which is just it's been amazing. And honestly, like I couldn't ask for anything more. So I think I've had just strong, inspirational women all through life, and that's hopefully made me, will hopefully help me to go on and inspire other people. Fingers
Well,
crossed.
I think you're already doing that. It's clear, you know, that you're already a role model for other people. I think who'll see this, will see your research, and just see that it's possible, I suppose. And I'd like to move now on to the research, if that's okay. So you recently published some research into the influence of positive facial expressions on young children when trying to encourage them to eat vegetables. Now, I'm speaking as somebody who pulls the most ridiculous faces in the world if I even see a vegetable. So this research fascinates me. So can you tell us a little bit about how you kind of physically did the research?
Yeah, so this study was actually a little bit different to what we'd usually do with these sort of child eating studies. So because of COVID, obviously couldn't go into schools or go into the lab and get people to come to us. We couldn't do that kind of research with COVID, so we had to go back to the drawing board and think what can we do. And obviously, in my research, we measure how much children eat. So we need someone who's going to be there to prepare the food and weigh the food.
Mm.
So what we did was use Zoom. So parents they completed an online questionnaire. I got in touch with them and said, "Here are the details. Can you book a Zoom session?" And we arranged that. So the Zoom sessions with the child would be me screen sharing and going through all the tasks. And then the parent would have already pre-prepared a bowl of broccoli, which they then would give to the child when prompted. And then after the study, they just reweigh the broccoli and let me know how much the child had eaten. And this was really useful so we can see the children's intake of the broccoli, so how many grams they actually ate.
Yeah.
We could also record the eating occasion with the child. So Zoom allowed us to record part of the session. And this was really helpful because we could see how willing the child was to try the food. So whether they'd actually put it in their mouth and swallow it, or whether they'd just maybe sniff it or touch it. So we could actually get quite really useful data. And we could also count how many times they tasted the broccoli, which is really important because these increased taste exposures to the broccoli could lead to intake of it in the future, hopefully. So yeah, it allowed us to answer all of our research questions, but online via Zoom, which was fab.
It sounds to me like a brilliantly designed study, but it also sounds like my personal hell. The idea of a bowl of broccoli in front of me just makes me. I'm actually shivering at the minute thinking of having to eat a bowl of broccoli.
Raw
So,
as well.
oh Lord, no. So you've done this research. You've managed to get this data. What were the findings?
So what we found was that when children saw other people enjoying eating the broccoli, so these positive facial expressions whilst they're eating it, the children actually ate more than double the amount of raw broccoli compared to children who just saw a control video, so just people putting pens away. And they also had more taste to the raw broccoli. So as I was saying before, they were putting it into their mouth more times than children who didn't see the positive video. So yeah, quite interesting findings there.
I'm kind of gobsmacked. Did you say twice as much they ate
Yeah,
as that?
yeah, twice as
What?
much as the broccoli. So I think it was around 12 grams on average that children were eating of raw broccoli, which was great. I mean, especially when it's raw because it's so bitter when it's raw. So this is the reason that we look at broccolis because it's such a bitter vegetable and we don't typically prefer bitter
Yeah.
vegetables. We have to learn to like them. So yeah.
There's a small part of me that kind of wishes this research was available when I was a child, because my mother used to have to mash carrot into potato and pretend it wasn't in there to try and convince me to eat some form of vegetables. And obviously it would be orange, and I'd say, I know there's carrot in there, you know. Um, so seeing that there are, you know, genuine techniques which are evidence based, which can improve the vegetable intake of children, that's incredible findings. And well done to you, and well done to the team for doing that. So where do you think you go with this next?
So we're actually running a study at the minute, which is almost trying to pick out some more questions based on those findings. So we are looking at what happens if over a week. So does this effect last a week later? And also what happens when there's another green vegetable there? So in this case, we're using another raw green vegetable, mange too. So yeah, this time the children get given the raw broccoli and raw mange too. And we want to see if maybe if the child doesn't like eating the raw broccoli, do they think, okay, well, I don't like that one, but I'm still going to eat this one? So does it generalize to another vegetable? Because that's really important for us, that children just learn to accept these typically bitter, more green vegetables. So yeah, and we also are looking at whether children need a repeated amount of exposures to the people enjoying broccoli. So what we're doing is showing some children the video once and some children the video a repeated number of times, because obviously this can help us to understand whether it is useful for parents. If you've got a smile every time that you eat broccoli, maybe it's less useful, but if it's just once and we can create these positive eating experiences for children and they last, then great. So yeah, they're the questions we're picking out now, and hopefully we'll know the answer soon.
Fingers crossed. That, I mean, that sounds fascinating. I can't wait to hear how that research goes. I've got a slightly related question, and this is with nobody in mind, but how might you make a, say, 46-year-old failed academic more likely to eat green bitter vegetables?
Well, I think the focus mainly of our research is just on creating this enjoyment of eating vegetables. So often we're told, like, eat your vegetables because they're good for you, and we're always told about the nutritional content of vegetables. But actually, what about if you just enjoy eating them? So I think this is the thing we need to focus, and obviously my research is primarily on children, so trying to establish this early on, but it doesn't mean you're not a lost cause. You still learn to enjoy eating vegetables. But yeah, I think creating these eating situations where we can share enjoyable eating experiences with others, and vegetables in particular, that's the main thing, I think, and that's hopefully the message of our research.
Well, I promise you, I'll give it a try. I may need to get my wife to smile at me
That's
while I'm
it.
eating vegetables, and see if that works. But obviously, she's married to me, so she doesn't smile at me much. So finally, what are your career aspirations long term? Where do you see Katie Edwards going in terms of research?
So I think the first thing is finish my PhD, get that done hopefully this year. So I'm due to finish that this year, and then I'd love to stay in research. So I think for me, my hopefully in the future I'll be able to continue research, maybe doing some postdoctoral research. If I can stay at Aston, that would be amazing. So at Aston, we're really fortunate to have such a close and supportive research group, and also have the institute. So I think, yeah, sounds like I'm doing a little plug for Aston here, but yeah, I mean, our research team is amazing. So hopefully continue here as much as possible, as long as possible. But yeah, and just working on other research projects. So I've been fortunate throughout my PhD to have a few other projects going on alongside it, and I think that's also given me some other avenues of things I'm interested in, and also things that I've got some knowledge in, which is useful. So yeah, hopefully staying in research, but watch this space. We'll see.
Brilliant. Well, it sounds like you've got a good plan down, and I know exactly how excellent Peach is and the people you've got around you, and that supportive environment, which actually we talked about in episode 1 with Rosalind Bill, is one of the most important things in terms of building a research career, is having good people around you. That brings us to the end of our questions, almost. We have one question at the end of Sofa Science, which is unseen. So, would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck?
Oh my gosh, that's a difficult question. I think, what was it? So the horse-sized duck, I think I would rather fight the horse-sized duck because there's just one of them, and hopefully
Interesting.
I'd be able to run fast enough to get away.
That,
My friends always said to me, "Why are you a runner?" Hopefully that would come in handy then, that I'd be able to run fast enough.
see, you've been preparing for this question all your life, then, Katie.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for that. I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank you for taking part in this. So on today's episode of Sofa Science, we talked about Katie Edwards, who is a doctoral psychology researcher at Aston University's research into the influence of positive facial expressions on young children, and heard some really remarkable results on how impressive the effect is when you have these positive facial expressions the young children eating vegetables. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you for having me.